So at the beginning, what I would like to do is just tell you a little bit about how trance works, and also take any questions at the beginning. We're going to have a good long time at the end to take questions as well. So we're going to have plenty of time. But I guess one thing I will say about trance is that it's a state of control. Often people think that trance is something about losing control, and it's very much the opposite. When we're in trance, I'm going to repeat this a little bit later, but when we're in trance, we start to get more control over over things that we don't normally have control over. So for example, we can slow down the heartbeat in trance, we can change our body temperatures in trance. And obviously I'm the hypnotist here, but I'm going to be giving you instructions, but you decide whether you take the instructions or not. And I'll give you an example. Actually, when I was training as a hypnotherapist, there was a guy who was training with me, and he described how he was at his mother-in-law's house once, and he had to drive back to his own house, and it was 20 minutes away. And he got into his car and he drove around for 20 minutes, and then found himself back at his mother-in-law's house because he was in a trance. And we go in and out of trance all the time. So most days we go into the trance about 6 or 7 times, unless you're a hypnotherapist like me, in which case we go into trance all the time. When I'm with clients, I'm in trance about half of the time normally. If a child had jumped out in front of that guy's car whilst he was driving around in trance, he would have come straight out and he would have hit the brakes immediately, right? So it's very similar in hypnosis, in hypnotherapy. You know, if I'm not going to, but if I tell you something you don't want to do, you don't have to do it. And you won't do it. And the bit of your mind which remains in control all of the time until you're in coma will kick back in. And the other thing to understand about it is that a lot of times, if people aren't familiar with hypnosis, they will be thinking, am I in trance? Am I not in trance? Is this a bit different? Is this the same? And I would ask you to put all of that aside for today, right? If you're listening along to the words that I'm saying, if you're following along, then you're doing everything that needs to be done. I found in my own practice as a hypnotherapist that when, you know, particularly for something like smoking, if I'm treating smoking or something, if people go into a really, really deep trance, I can lose track of them, or rather they can lose track of me. One of the levels, hypnotists talk about 31 levels of trance, and the 31st level down is an amnesic state, which means you can't actually remember from one word to the next. If you drop down into that state, it's totally fine because your unconscious is listening, but you might not be able to remember anything consciously. So don't worry if your trance isn't low enough or anything like that, and don't question yourself about where you're going with it. My first experience with hypnotherapy, I came out of it thinking, whoa, what was that? What happened there? You know. I didn't think anything had happened at all, but the changes that it made were quite profound. I'm going to talk about those as I get into my wrap. So just before we start, does anyone have any questions they want to ask me? I'm just going to actually repeat this question because Abe's just arrived and Cosmin has just arrived as well. So I just got a question from from Shawnee. Are those 31 stages clearly mapped and individually named? Yes, they are. It's different hypnotists will give them different names, and in history there's been times when those stages have been divided up differently. Modern hypnotists tend to talk about 31, and yeah, they are mapped, and they've also got specific well, like I say, the lowest level is an amnesic state. So they've all got, you know, the breathing changes, what the eyes are doing change. You might notice today, as we're doing hypnosis, you might notice your eyes kind of flickering a little bit. You might notice your eyes going from side to side, which is what happens in REM sleep. So yeah, all of these have different names. Anyone else got does that answer your question, Shawnee? Yeah. Okay. Cool. If anyone else has got any questions, feel free to. Oh, there's Layla as well. Hello.
Oh, hello.
Hiya. I was just describing a little bit what trance is, and
please hold on over there for a moment, yeah.
Okay.
Not for pianist.
What's that?
Yeah. No practice at all. No.
I'm not sure what's going on there. I think someone Someone's just arriving.
Yeah, if you have a lot of background noise, can you make sure your mic's turned off just so that it doesn't create a hoo-ha?
And let's just take another 5 minutes just to resolve any questions that anyone, or any worries that anyone has about hypnosis. Is anyone there not? Oh, here's a question. What are the risks of going or being in trance? Is it true one can get lost? They used to say back in the day, you should make sure your hypnotist is of good health, because if they're not of good health, then you might go into trance and they might die, and then you'd be stuck in trance forever. It has never happened. No one has ever been stuck in trance. So there aren't any dangers in that sense of getting stuck. You can get lost. I think I'm going to say this right at the beginning. We are all in trance all the time. I think that's a good way of looking at it, right? The world is extremely complicated, and what we tend to do is we tend to say, okay, the world is like this, you make a model of it, and then you go and inhabit that model of the world, right? And it's not the real world, because the world is too complicated to understand. So we put ourselves into a particular trance, into a particular state of a way of apprehending the world. So we move between trances, and there's loads of risks of being in trance. There's a risk of, for example, you being sold something when you're in a shop, because all kinds of hypnotic tricks are going on when you're shopping. From the noise that they're playing, to the colors going on, to the repeated commands, embedded commands all over the place. There's a lot of, the main risk is being in trance without knowing you're in trance. If you're in trance and you know you're in trance, and I say something outrageous, your brain is going to kick in, or your conscious mind is going to kick in and saying, I don't want to do that. So I would say that experience with hypnosis is a way of protecting yourself from those dangers. My internet's patchy. Okay, that's fine. I think we've got Banks here. Why didn't it work for me that time? I don't know, Banks. Milton Erickson said that it can take 5 times for someone to get really good at hypnosis. Some people can't. Everyone can be hypnotized. If you can go to sleep, you can go into trance. Some people can't get hypnotized in certain places, though. So trying to hypnotize someone in public doesn't always work. For example, it's difficult to hypnotize someone if the hypnotist looks like someone they hate. So there might be specific reasons why, in a specific case, one hypnotist can't hypnotize somebody. But unless you're brain damaged, or unless you've had a kind of evil hypnotist who has gone in, put you into trance, and said you're not going to be able to go into trance anymore unless I do something, then there shouldn't be any obstacle to going into trance. So what I would say, Banks, is just to kind of relax into it and not worry about whether it's working or not, and keep coming back to my voice and just see where it takes you. We've got a question from Alex here. Would you like us to have an intention before the trance? I think that's a really good idea. I would suggest that you set an intention for yourself at the beginning. Just hold something in your mind, something you might like revealed, or something you might want worked on. We're going to be inviting some spirit animals into the space towards the end today. In fact, that's going to be the gist of what we're going to do. I'm going to be talking for about an hour. We're going to go in and out of trance all the way through. So it's going to be an induction and a lecture at the same time. And then at the end of it, we're going to do some shamanic techniques, or we're going to go through a kind of shamanic language pattern to introduce us to our power animals. And that's actually just reminded me, I need to find my maraca, my rattle. So just give me 30 seconds. I'm going to run downstairs, and just sit there for a moment and set your intention, work out what it is you'd like to have revealed, or what it is you'd like to work on. If you don't have anything particularly you want to work on or to have revealed, don't worry about it. You don't need an intention. Give me 1 second. Thanks for waiting. Okay, cool. I do want to check one thing actually, just to see how the speaker works. My maraca. Can you all hear me if I speak while shaking the maraca? Does that sound come through all right?
Yeah, it comes through all right.
Okay, brilliant. Great. Sarah, are you happy for us to get going?
Yep, perfect.
Cool. Super cool. So thanks everybody for coming, joining us for some real exploration at the Explorers Club. Hypnosis, links between hypnosis and the occult sciences. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to invite you all to make yourselves nice and comfortable. And that means you can turn your videos off if you like. You can face in whatever direction you like. And it's good, including your head being supported. So it may be that you can move yourself by the wall, so your head your head can rest against the wall. You see what I mean? Your head can drop forward, that's all right. And if you're really good at yoga, some people will kind of sit and their head will naturally stay. But the easiest thing to do is to put yourself in a position where you can relax. Bear in mind, you've got nothing to do for the next hour, nothing to worry about, nothing to think about. You got some time just to enjoy the state of trance all by yourself. Just giving people a few more minutes. Take your time to arrange yourself and get comfortable. Today we're going to be drifting in and out of trance, backwards and forwards, running and returning. So drop in and drop out, and don't worry about remembering or forgetting. Don't worry about any of all that. That is all recorded here. You can go back to it later. Don't worry if you're doing it right or if you're doing it wrong. You can leave that up to me. So you can sit back, you can even lie down if you want to. All your questions will be answered later and they'll come back to you as well. So don't even worry about trying to remember your questions, because when you come out of trance, those questions are going to come back to you. And as I said before, when you're in trance, you can move around, you can wiggle around. When we're asleep, we wiggle and we don't wake up. Great, you're all doing really well. Between the Worlds, an introduction to hypnosis and trance. Hypnosis comes from the word hypnos, the god of sleep, the god of sleep. Hypnotists use all kinds of techniques when they are speaking, and one of those is the embedded command. So you might hear me say something along the lines of, hypnosis comes from the word sleep. And that's exactly what an embedded command is, where you slip something in that bypasses the conscious mind into the conscious mind. And some hypnotists will work in disguise here. They won't tell their clients about it. I'm telling you right now, I'm going to be using all kinds of embedded commands, and you can enjoy watching how your mind sidesteps to let them in. Of course, hypnosis isn't really sleep. Although the word hypnos comes from sleep, hypnosis is something quite close to sleep, and we call it trance. And trance is something that we go into quite often Most people go to trance about 7 times a day. We can go when we're running. People go when they're watching TV and their eyes dilate and their heartbeat changes, and they can get so focused on whatever they're watching that their autonomic nervous system starts to respond, and they'll get goosebumps, or they might scream when it gets scary. Trance is where we focus. It's where the mind, all the parts of the mind, the conscious parts of the mind and the unconscious parts of the mind are focused on the same thing. That's one way of understanding trance. And everybody can go into trance. If you can go into sleep, you can go into a deep state of relaxation. Hypnotists are fond of repeating themselves as well, and sometimes hypnotists say techniques using words in strange places to confuse a mind looking for closure. Hypnotists open up spaces without closure, with artful vagueness. And we do that in order to let the imagination in and let the magic work. And sometimes we leave open pauses when we speak as hypnotists. And what happens in the mind when you leave a pause is the mind starts to go, where is he going with this? What's going on? And the mind turns inwards, and it gives way to imagination. So with hypnosis, we're turning inwards, and the techniques we use, including confusing language, including opening up spaces, including repetition, and sometimes including sound, are also the techniques of occultism, and they're also the techniques of shamanism. And we're going to be using these techniques today. And whenever you notice or whenever you don't notice these techniques, just allow yourself to drop a little bit deeper into trance, and enjoy that trance. I'm a hypnotherapist, among other things, and I'm a hypnotherapist because I went to a hypnotherapist once upon a time. I'd given a radio interview about my first book. The book is about inspiration and revelation through non-ordinary means, such as trance and hypnagogia, the moment just after sleep as we wake up. And the interview went terribly wrong. It went really badly wrong. So badly, they didn't actually air the interview. That's how bad the interview was. So I went to a hypnotherapist because I wanted help with public speaking, and he sat me down and he asked me to imagine, what would it look like if I was good at public speaking? And he invited me, before I went into trance, just to imagine what it would be like. And I said, well, I'd be in a room full of people who looked interested. And what else? Well, they'd be leaned forward in their chairs, they'd be attentive. And what else? Well, they will have paid in order to see me. And this guy then put me into trance. This hypnotist, he turned out to be a member of the Reformed Order of the Golden Dawn. He's a card carrying, literally a tarot card carrying magical occultist. By the way, this is another hypnotist technique. We put brackets within brackets to confuse the mind. This guy, the occultist, he put me into a trance and he recreated the scene that I told him already. He took me into a place where I was on stage and he had people looking at me and listening to me. And this is one of the things we can do with hypnosis. We can create imaginary realms, and then we can move into those imaginary realms. And I want to invite you to let your imagination take over, to let your conscious mind drift as I'm speaking. And you can hear what I'm saying, or you can use my voice as an anchor to remind your unconscious mind to go deeper and to just tangle up your conscious mind. You can do what you like with this hypnotherapy or with this hypnosis session. So now I find myself giving talks just like I imagined that I would in that very first hypnotherapy session. And I get to give them all over the place now. I don't seem to have a problem with public speaking anymore. And this was all done in about 15 minutes in a very light trance. And that's how I got into hypnosis and hypnotherapy. And in fact, as I'm speaking now, because I'm speaking slowly and I'm doing a familiar thing here with hypnosis, I can feel myself dropping into trance. The greatest hypnotist of the modern era was a gentleman by the name of Milton Erickson. He was the man who coined the famous phrase, "My voice goes with you." And he used to put himself into trance, and then from there he would lead his clients into trance. He also noted that talking about trance leads us into trance, which is very curious. This is what happened when the mind turns in. For example, if I ask you to remember what it felt like 2 minutes before you woke up, your mind turns inwards, and watch as it turns inwards. Enjoy it as it turns inwards, and let my voice go with you as it turns inwards, down to deeper and deeper levels. If I ask you what it felt like 10 minutes before you woke up, where would your mind take you to? With hypnotherapy in the modern era, we tend to try to be clinical as possible about what we're doing. So hypnotherapists, who are literally people speaking to you using well-chosen magical words, we treat things like migraine, and we treat irritable bowel syndrome, digestive problems, and we can treat dermatitis. I've treated dermatitis. And it's an interesting question. How does the mind purify and remedy the skin or the organs? And this is, of course, the daily trade of a shaman, to purify, to rid the body of diseases. But we're in a fairly clinical model in the 21st century with hypnotherapy. So, for example, I tend to work with a Freudian model that describes different bits of the mind, different parts of the unconscious. Hypnotists and also occultists tend to be quite comfortable moving between models, or reality tunnels, as a great magician once called them. And I invite you to move between models and move between modes easily over the next 40 minutes or so, and just explore what we can find in different spaces and different places. So Freud's model has 3 parts to the mind. We talk about the primitive unconscious, or the emotional unconscious, and this is the part of your mind which is busy keeping you alive. This is the part of the mind that panics when you encounter a tiger, the part of the mind that runs away as fast as it can. When that happens, when you're being pursued by a tiger, your body is not doing the normal things that it does. It's not digesting your food, for example. It's not maintaining your skin and your hair, which is why skin problems and people's hair falls out when they get stressed sometimes. Irritable bowel syndrome. These are all manifestations of an anxious state mediated by cortisol. And when cortisol rises, dopamine drops and serotonin drops, and we tend to get anxious and we get hyper-focused, which is entirely appropriate for the situation where we once upon a time will have needed it, encountering tigers in the wild, but there aren't many tigers here anymore. And if you were to encounter a tiger, what would happen is, well, you become hypervigilant, and your muscles would start producing sugars, for example. Your bowel would stop doing its thing, which is why if it's really scary, you might mess your trousers. But the main thing is you run away from the tiger as fast as possible. And then when you get home, when you've run away from the tiger, you're not going to think, oh, I was just about to go and buy some bananas. You're going to think, where's that tiger? Where's that tiger? Where's that tiger? Where's that tiger? This is the state of anxiety, state of hyper-focus on a specific thing, which is also obsessive, and it's also pessimistic. And it's designed to be pessimistic. It's meant to be pessimistic, that particular part of the mind. Because if we were a species which encountered tigers and said, oh, it's all right, it's probably eaten, it's optimistic, I'll be all right, then we wouldn't have lasted very long. Different parts of the mind work in very different ways, and they're for different situations. And there aren't many tigers about at the moment, but we have to deal with high levels of background stress and very little acute stress. And we're not really built for that. We're built for a much more raw and perhaps a more violent, more brutal lives. You do see in magical initiations, however, or Masonic initiations, for example, they are designed to access that kind of primal terror, which is a powerful state. You see some initiations where people, First Nations people, for example, they will hang you by your flesh hooks up from a tree or something like that. So there are initiation ceremonies which do access that kind of primal fear, because it is a very powerful state. But we're not going to be doing any of that today. We're doing some very soft things today. So we've talked about the primitive unconscious, the emotional unconscious. We can also talk about the intellectual conscious, which is the optimistic part of your mind, the part of your mind which says, I'm going to go and catch an antelope today, and the part of your mind which works out what you need in order to do that. Well, I need my spear, and I need my go faster berries, and I need my water, and I need to remember where the antelopes go at this part of the year. And this is what modern hypnotherapists engage when they want to overcome anxiety or sleep disruption, when they want people to imagine things going well. This is how we work, nice and clinical, trying to get away from the stain of mesmerism and the stain of the occult. But today I'm not doing a hypnotherapy session. Today I'm talking about the occult. We're going to be looking into the other side of hypnotism that links with the occult sciences. And these links go very, very deep. Meditation is one of the pillars of magic in all of the magical traditions. And sometimes people ask, what's the difference between meditation and hypnosis? So I would answer that by saying there are various ways of getting into trance. Trance is where we bring the attention into one pointed focus. The conscious mind and the unconscious mind looking at the same thing with the same intensity. And meditation is one way into that particular state, and hypnosis is another way into that. And one of the differences said is that the hypnosis tends to be led, whereas meditation isn't. I used to be a Buddhist back in the day. I was in a Buddhist group for 5 years, and the meditation teacher used to guide us through different stages of meditation. He used to count us down, in fact. He used to count us down very much like a hypnotist counts backwards. So he guided us through these stages, and then when he stopped doing that, and when I went home, I could still remember his voice. And although I was reminding myself to move through the different stages, I could hear his voice, and he had a Mancunian accent, and quite a specific accent. And even when I remember these stages of meditation, the longest of counting, the longer of counting, the shorter of counting, and the shortest of counting, I remember them in his voice. His voice went with me and continues to guide me, even though it's me running the program. So perhaps that difference between meditation and hypnosis isn't that it's guided. Hypnotists are fond of saying that all hypnosis is self-hypnosis. And we guide ourselves through stages, or the hypnotist guides you through the stage, or you allow the voice of the hypnotist to guide you. But always you're in control. So I'm giving you instructions and you can follow them if you like. And you can not follow them if you like. It's completely up to you. And it's the same with the other hypnosis going on the TV or in the supermarket, where every single aisle has a sign reminding you the food is good value, artfully vague, everywhere repeated, very compelling if you let the advert go with you. And sometimes people think that being hypnotized involves giving up control over yourself, which is not really the case at all. In fact, as I said, trance can give us more control over things we don't normally control, like our breath, or rather our heartbeat. People can change their body temperature, for example, when they become really good at meditation and hypnosis. Another guy, a hypnotist I know, he is part of a Buddhist group, and one of the people in his Buddhist group had open heart surgery without anesthetic after meditating themselves into a state where they could do that. This used to be very common, hypnotic amputation, or mesmeric amputation as it used to be called, putting people into trance and then cutting off a leg or something. And this still happens today, usually for people who are allergic to anesthetic. They will sometimes engage a hypnotist in order to put them into a trance so they can do things like hernia operations. But amazingly, not only can hypnosis reduce the sensation of pain or eliminate the sensation of pain, but it can also reduce blood flow, which makes it very useful in surgery. Normally, obviously, we don't have active control over the blood flow. Hypnosis and meditation both tend to involve breathing, so you'll often hear a hypnotist say something like, notice what the breath feels like in the body. Notice what it feels like when you breathe in, and notice what it feels like when you breathe out. Hypnosis, like meditation, often involves repetition, repeating things over and over again, over and over again, or sometimes reiterating in different ways as you notice what the breath feels like in the body, what your body feels like in your room. We do this with mantra as well, which is a series of syllables repeated over and over again. When we repeat something, we go round the conscious mind, just like in the supermarket when you don't even notice. You're being told it's good value, it's good value, it's good value. You see it so much you forget that it's there, and in it goes and bypasses your mind and affects your behavior. So watch out for hypnotists, and watch out for advertisers, and watch out for the tricks of a shaman. Be alert and be relaxed and be in control as you go deeper. This is my rattle. Notice how the noise sounds. How each beat is like a step on a ladder, going down into deeper and deeper levels of relaxation. Sound is something often used in meditation and, of course, in magic, the sound of the voice or the music. One difference between hypnosis and meditation, perhaps, is that hypnosis, or hypnotherapy at least, tends to have an endpoint. We're trying to reduce anxiety or overcome infertility, or trying to get rid of a skin complaint or something. But I've heard that meditation has a purpose as well. I've heard that the idea is to escape the wheel of samsara. I don't know if we're going to do that today, but we're certainly going somewhere. Hypnosis, like meditation, will often begin with fixing on a point, fixing your mind on a single point. In fact, the great magician Aleister Crowley describes how magic is the art of focusing everything towards one point. So, for example, in ritual, if you're petitioning Venus for her help with a love spell, you would organize everything in the temple to be appropriate to Venus. So there would be 7 candles if you're a Kabbalist, not 6 candles, not 8 candles, but 7 candles, and they would be green. And I wonder if you can imagine that now. I wonder if you can imagine a circle with 7 green candles. They wouldn't be orange, they wouldn't be red, they wouldn't be yellow, they'd be green, because green is the color affixed to Venus. And the scent would, of course, be the scent of roses. And I wonder if you can, in your imagination, imagine what it would be like if the scent of roses was in your nose. And in your circle, the lighting would be low and the incense would be thick. And the music would be the music of strings and women's voices. And the words of your love spell would be spoken poetically, they'd be spoken softly. They wouldn't be spoken harshly as for a magical ritual, petitioning Mars, for example. Perhaps those words would be spoken in groups of 7. He loves me not. He loves me not. He loves me not. He loves me. In magic, everything is focused to one point, and everything is simplified down to one point. This idea of point fixation was first noted by James Braid, who was the physician who first used the term hypnotism in English. He told one of his patients who had come to his house to go and sit in a room whilst he dealt with another patient. And after 20 minutes, he went to go and check in on the guy, and he found him totally fixated on the lamp in the room. And in fact, he had to rouse him from the trance. When we focus our attention on one point, all kinds of interesting things happen. And at a very basic level, the level of the mechanics of the eyes are normally, they're designed to dart around, to move around, constantly taking in information. They're not really designed to fix on one point, and it makes our eyes tired. And I just want to show you how that's useful in hypnosis. So let's just try that. So if everybody is ready to drop into a wonderful state of relaxation in hypnosis, I'd like you just to, if your eyes are closed, I'd like you to open them now, please. Thank you. And I'd like you to keep your body nice and comfortable. You can shift it to make it comfortable and rest your head as it is. But I'd like you to find a point in front of you and a little bit up. If you're lying down, it's going to be on the ceiling, but just a little bit behind you. So not straight ahead of you, because you want your eyes to be pointing up in the direction of your eyebrows a little bit. And if the point is in front of you, then just fixate on a point and keep your eyes open. So let all of your attention go into that point now, and notice what the chair feels like around you or beneath you. And notice what the breath feels like in your body as you fix your eyes and you fix your mind on that point. That's right, just like that. And if you hear noises outside or inside, or if you hear strange gremlins on the Zoom connection, they are not going to disturb you. They are just triggers to remind you to relax and go deeper and deeper with every breath. Focus your mind on that point. And in a moment, when I say now, I want you to move your attention to a point halfway between that point where your eyes are fixated now and your eyes, in that same line of sight, a point in the middle of the air. And you can go ahead and do that now, just shifting your attention to a point halfway between your eyes and the original point. That's right. And you may notice that your eyes are getting a bit more tired, and they're starting to blink every now and again. And I don't want you to let your eyes close just yet. Keep your eyes open. And when they do close, you can drop into a wonderful state of relaxation. For now, I want you to keep them open, just focusing all of your mind halfway between that original point and your eyes. And you're doing really well. And in a moment, I'm going to ask you to shift your attention again, this time just an inch in front of your eyes in that same line of sight. So go ahead and do that now, putting all of your mind into that point just in front of your eyes, and all of your thoughts into that point just in front of your eyes. And of course, thoughts are sometimes passing through your mind. And if they do, it's a little bit like when you're walking along the pavement and you hear behind you a car coming along the road, and it drives past and it drives on, and you don't need to turn around and you don't need to pay much attention to it, because you know that it's just a car passing, or just like a cloud passing over you on a sunny day, not disturbing the tranquility of the day. Thoughts can move through trance. In a moment, I'm going to ask you to shift your attention to 1 inch behind the eyes to the point at which consciousness arises. So go ahead and do that now, and you can close your eyes and drop into a wonderful state of relaxation. Relaxing the eyes and the muscles around the eyes and focusing on that point behind the eyes, the point at which consciousness arises. And does it mean anything to say the point at which consciousness arises? Maybe it doesn't matter what it means as you put all of your attention into that point just behind the eyes. And what I'd like you to do now, as you settle into this state, is to relax your eyelids totally and completely now. Just imagine what it would feel like to totally relax your eyelids, the smallest muscles in the body. So totally and completely relaxed that they just wouldn't want to open. And in a moment, I'm going to ask you to test those eyes to see that they won't open. And of course, they are your eyes. You can open them whenever you want, but I don't want you to do that. I want you to stay in control of your relaxation. Relax those eyelids totally and completely. And you can go ahead and give them a test now to see that they won't open. That's right, just a little test to see that they won't open. Very good. That's enough. And then take that relaxation on the eyelids and send it up over the eyebrows now and into the forehead now. And up to the top of the head, just letting all of that tension, any tension you find in the top of the head, just notice it and then invite it to dissolve away. And you can relax the back of the head now, muscles around the neck, and you can relax the temples. Let the tension go out of the face as well. We don't normally let the tension go from the face unless we're in a very deep sleep, but just invite that tension to drain out of your face now, and let's relax all around the jaw and the neck, and just send a wave of relaxation down through the shoulders now and down the back, and those two long muscles down either side of the spine. Send a wave of relaxation all the way down, dissolving any tension as it goes down. And notice what it feels like just to relax. Notice whatever you notice. And you can relax all the muscles behind the ribs now, lower back now. And you can send a wave down over the shoulder, down through the triceps and the biceps to the elbow and all the little muscles around the elbow, and down through the forearms to the wrists, and through the hands to the fingers, the very tips of the fingers and the tips of the thumbs, just relaxing. Enjoying that feeling of relaxation. Bring your attention to the shoulders now at the front of the body, relaxing those muscles, just inviting any tension to dissolve away. Relaxing the chest, solar plexus. Noticing that the chest keeps on inflating, keeps doing its thing without you telling it to. And the heart keeps beating, moving blood around the body, all under the command of the unconscious mind. The conscious mind can drift because it's got nothing to do. Of course, it might want to stay at a distance just to make sure everything is all good. Send it to a distance and let the unconscious mind take over as you relax the belly now, down to the waist, and down through the pelvis, down through into the thighs, and down to the knees, relaxing all the muscles around the knees, and out, down through the shins and the calves to the ankles. Relaxing the muscles of the feet, all the way down to the soles of the feet and the tips of the toes. Very good. You're doing really, really well. Point fixation is the first level of trance, and moving energy around the body is another level of trance. And you can do this whenever you like. You can do it at the bus stop. You can do it when you have a moment. Wonderful way just to alter your own level of trance, level of relaxation. You can do it again, bringing your attention up to the top of the head, moving down more quickly this time, relaxing all the muscles of the head, through the face, through the neck, down through the shoulders, shooting down the arms, running down through the chest and the solar plexus and the belly and the hips, down through the legs, to the knees, to the ankles, and out to the feet. In a moment, I'm going to count to 3. And when I get to the number 3, you're going to pop your eyes open. They're going to open normally and naturally. And then I'm going to count 3, 2, 1. And when I get to 1, you're going to close the eyes and go twice as deep as you are at the moment, if you are ready. 1, 2, 3, opening the eyes. And 3, 2, 1, close the eyes all the way down. Deeper and deeper. Deeper and deeper with every breath. Twice as deep as you were before. And notice anything you notice in the body, any movement in the mind, any emotions arising. We're going to do that a few more times. I'm going to count to 3. Once again, you're going to open the eyes, and then I'm going to count 3, 2, 1. You're going to close the eyes and go twice as deep. 1, 2, 3, opening the eyes. 3, 2, 1, all the way down, deeper and deeper. Relaxing and letting go. And if you need to shift your body, you can shift your body, going deeper and deeper, twice as deep as you were before. And my voice goes with you. And sometimes people notice colors moving behind the eyes, or impressions of colors, or shadows moving behind the eyes. Some people may notice sensations in the body sometimes, and not in the stomach or tension in the head. And if you do, you can just move your attention there and invite it to relax. Maybe you can move these sensations around, or these colors. You can invite them to become less intense or more intense, or you can change them. And sometimes people see fragments of memory, and sometimes people see flashes of the future, and you can enjoy whatever comes up in the mind because you're in control, and you can modify the imagination and you can work your magic, carving tracks into the future for time and space to fill. Enjoy whatever is communicated by the unconscious. This last time, when I count to 3, I want you to drop just as deep as you feel comfortable going at the moment. 1, 2, 3, open the eyes. 3, 2, 1, all the way down. Deeper and deeper. That's right. And I wonder if from that deep state you can imagine your favorite food or a food that you really like. Now imagine that favorite food, and if it's warm, imagine it's steaming, and if it's a cold food, what does its freshness feel like? And what kind of a plate is it served on? And who normally cooks it? And where do you get it? And what's the smell of it? And I wonder if you can smell the smell of it. What would it be like eating it? And when was the last time you ate it? Make those colors brighter, make the edges sharper. Some foods are quite noisy when you eat them. Maybe there's a noise associated, or maybe there's the noise of a restaurant where you like to eat it. Maybe you'll notice that your salivary glands are starting to produce saliva because the autonomic nervous system responds to the imagination, and this is how hypnosis works. It works on autonomic function, and this is how magic works as well. Works with parts of the self which are not normally consciously engaged. So as I said, hypnotists are fond of saying the word sleep. And whenever I say the word sleep over the next half an hour, I want you to drop back into this state of hypnosis, into this state of relaxation where you are now. And if you're happy with that, just nod your head for me and nod your head for yourself. Good. Very good. So you can keep your eyes closed or you can open them up now. It's all up to you. We're going to be drifting in and out of sleep, in and out of relaxation and hypnosis. Now, one of the things that happens when we relax is that insights can pop into our mind. And sometimes it's a personal insight about our own story, about how we treat each other, for example. But sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's bigger. And if we go all the way back to Archimedes, when he was relaxing in the bath, he discovered something about how to measure the volume of water. And he jumped out of the bath and he ran down the road shouting, "Eureka, I found it," with a new idea in his head and a new scientific technique. And there are plenty of scientists who've discovered things when they stop to relax. Calvin is a good example, the guy who discovered the Calvin cycle, which is how photosynthesis works. He was sitting waiting for his wife in a car park, looking at the steering wheel, and suddenly, in a matter of 20 seconds, he downloaded all of the information about all of the substrates, all of the molecules which make up the cycle, the very complex molecular biology of the cycle of hypnosis. And he won cycle of photosynthesis, and he won a Nobel Prize for it. This is very common in the history of science, and it's common in mathematics, for example. The great Indian mathematician Ramanujan worked like this. This was a young man. He died quite young. He was completely uneducated, very poor. He didn't even have enough money to buy paper. And we still don't have some of the proofs for the formulas that he came up with 100 years ago, which are incredibly complex. And these formulas, which are now used in string theory and whole branches of chaos maths, which have been opened up on the back of this guy's formulas, he attributed them all to his family goddess, who would whisper to him as he was waking up in the morning in a state of hypnagogia. And inspiration is an interesting word, isn't it? It means to breathe in. And how does your breath feel as you breathe in? Notice what the breath feels like when you breathe in and when you breathe out. Now, one of the things which is fascinating about hypnosis and about trance generally is that it's a threat to the current order. It's very strange, but if you look at some groups that practice meditation, and the Quakers are a good example, they have always been a threat to order, the Quakers. The Quakers, when they meet, they sit, sometimes 20 minutes, sometimes 40 minutes, and they don't say anything. They sit and they meditate, and they've been doing this since the mid-17th century. And they've also been busy resisting tax. They were, in fact, the first tax resistors, refusing to pay a tax for a war, resisting war in a time when pacifism was a serious insult to the country and the empire. The Quakers organized the first naked protest in England. You don't normally think about that when you think about the Quakers today sitting nice and quietly, but they were a revolutionary group, and they still sit there quietly, and occasionally someone will stand up and break the silence to say something meaningful. And today they're active in all kinds of activist organizations, very active in Extinction Rebellion, for example. They decided to move their monthly meetings to the British Museum to protest the patronage of BP, and we're doing frontline activism against Vietnam as well. They've always been a threat to the state and oppressed as such. And this threat to the state of order is interesting. When we open up a space outside of our normal daily life, the trances that make up our work time and family time, the trances where we think normally about normal things, we allow ourselves to relax into a space of potential. We often find ourselves questioning the normal order of things. We begin to hear a quiet voice, the same voice that moves the Quakers to break their silence and speak. And this was, of course, the same threat that the Gnostics posed during the early years of Christianity. In the time of the Roman Empire, the Gnostics were challenged for their particular types of meditation and for taking instructions from invisible spirits, taking instructions for Jesus Christ reborn in the spirit. Because when that quiet voice speaks, it often speaks as a threat to the status quo. And this threat to the status quo goes right back to the beginning of hypnosis, before the term was coined, to Franz Anton Mesmer, the first mesmerist, or the guy who gave his name to mesmerist. He was a physician who wrote a thesis in 1766 called The Influence of the Planets on the Human Body. And this wasn't medical astrology, which was quite common at the time. It was a different thing. He was talking about tides in the body, moving tides around the body, the same way that the moon draws water around the planet. He thought that you could create an artificial tide, and he did this with his first patient. He made her drink iron filings and moved magnetized rods around her body, and she was cured. So modern hypnotists look at this and say, well, look how powerful is the art of suggestion. Mesmer started working with magnetized rods, and he became so busy that he didn't have time to see his patients. So he used to touch a tree with one of his rods, and then the patients would go and touch the tree themselves and be cured of their complaints. He treated everything from paralysis to epilepsy to all kinds of digestive complaints. But while he was doing this, he was also prancing around perfumed boudoirs in Paris, throwing women into swoons, and this got the attention of the authorities, and they didn't like it, and he got hounded out of Paris. There was a commission by Louis XVI, who used to be one of his clients, but who organized an expose, and they said they couldn't find this invisible fluid, this animal magnetism that he was talking about. Of course, it's invisible, they couldn't find it. But they also released a secret report saying that mesmerism is a threat to public morality, and they were absolutely right about that, because as we move through trances, and a hypnotist can take you into a different trance and out of the collective trance that constitutes our culture and our society, and it can open the doors to new forms of association. So mesmerism fell into disrepute, but some people kept it up. And one of the great mesmerists was Baron de Pottet, who was a theosophist and a hypnotist. Madame Blavatsky quotes this guy, de Pottet, extensively, as does Eliphas Levi. Eliphas Levi was a great magician. Aleister Crowley thought he was a reincarnation of Levi. The man behind the famous image of Baphomet, the horned god with salve et coagula on his arms. Levi said that Baron du Pottet had been granted magical powers by the use of his mesmerism. Du Pottet said he could remotely influence things in another room or another part of the world. And he also gave instances of clairvoyance. In fact, on a murder she hasn't seen, and that information turned into a conviction. The murderer was convicted in a court of law because of the clairvoyant sight of the client that du Pottet hypnotized. Du Pottet said you could talk to the dead with hypnosis. You could practice necromancy and talk to the spirits which have never had a body. And this is the stuff of shamanism. Shamanism is often about connecting with the spirits of the dead. The word ayahuasca is translated as the vine of the dead, and it can put you in touch with the dead. But there are softer ways of connecting to these spirits, and we're going to be doing that shortly. Du Pottet said that mesmerism was socially transformative, and he set up a free school of magnetism in 1826, specifically for those ends. And this was not long after the French Revolution. He put his money where his mouth was to try and force social change through the means of hypnosis. Du Pottet taught hypnosis to the physician Garth Wilkinson. Wilkinson went home and he hypnotized his servant Henry, and Henry went into a trance, but Henry refused to come out of the trance. Again, we see the flipping of the hierarchy, subversion of the normal social mores, because gentlemen were not normally disobeyed by their servants. Henry was a naughty servant. Du Pottet also taught Eliotson, John Eliotson, a great physician of the 1800s. He was the man who introduced the stethoscope to England. He was also an avid phrenologist, looking at the bumps of the head. He was also the president of the Royal Medical and Surgical Society and the founder of one of the great medical schools in London. He was a gentleman physician, but he used to treat the poor for free, which was something that didn't really happen at the time. He was quite a reformer, this guy. And he got wind of hypnosis and he started using it for his patients, treating all kinds of things from paraplegia to epilepsy, St. Vitus dance. And he gave a demonstration of hypnosis with his servant girl by the name of Elizabeth Oakey. Notice the class dynamics again. It is often servants getting hypnotized by gentlemen. John Eliotson said he couldn't be hypnotized because he himself was a gentleman. This is the power of suggestion. If you think that kind of thing is true, you will find it true. So Eliotson gave demonstrations with Elizabeth Oakey. He used to take her around the wards of the hospital and ask her to diagnose patients and talk about the prognosis of their disease. And on one occasion, she diagnosed all of the patients in a ward except for 3. And he asked her why she didn't diagnose the 3, and she said, well, those 3 all had the angel of death perched on the end of their beds. And by the following morning, all 3 patients had died. Elizabeth Oakey was a great subject for hypnosis, and Eliotson organized a demonstration of hypnosis at his London hospital, teaching hospital. And before the demonstration, she was sitting demure in her chair, eyes cast downwards, as is appropriate from someone of her class and gender in the 1800s. And he hypnotized her, at which point she started to be lewd and got up and started joking with men and pointing to their trousers and talking about their trousers, which was not done at that particular time. Rude and outrageous. In this particular demonstration, which had been much hyped in the press, he did his normal thing. He put pins through her to show her that pain didn't hurt, and he would make her slip into trance or drop straight into trance when she was in mid-sentence, and she would collapse and have to be caught by his assistant, Mr. Wood, when he said his special word. And on this one occasion, in front of hundreds of the great and good, the gentlemen of London and the physicians, she insisted in front of all the assembled doctors that she would not come out of trance. And Elliotson tried over and over again to bring her out of trance. And she told him from her trance that she would only come out of her trance if the assistant, Mr. Wood, brought her out of it. Again, you can see this flipping of the hierarchy, this threat to the social order. This scandal was permanent. Hypnosis was permanently damaged by this, and ever since then it's been mistrusted. And if you go to the NHS website and look at hypnosis today, it's extremely mistrustful. Elliotson gave an account of the amputation of a man's thigh at the Royal Medical Society. He used to be the president of the association, the Medical Society. The other gentleman insisted that the doctor must be mistaken. This didn't happen. This simply didn't happen. And this was a general response at the time to the effects of hypnosis. The same thing happened to the French hypnotist Cloquet, who also gave an account of an amputation under hypnosis, and he was laughed at. They said, no, you're incorrect. It simply didn't happen. John Elliotson lost his position because he kept on being insistent about hypnosis. He lost his academic positions. He got into all kinds of trouble, but he also taught a gentleman by the name of James Esdale, a hospital manager in Calcutta looking after 5 hospitals. And Esdale started to practice mesmeric amputation. So you put someone into a trance and you cut something off. And in his hospitals, they were cutting off legs, they were doing cataract operations, they were doing penis operations. The hospitals performed over 600 major operations and many minor operations. And at this time in history, surgery was a very dangerous business because they didn't have any anesthesia. So normally you would fill a man up with drink or a woman up with drink and hold him down with strong men. So strong men and strong drink and a sharp saw to amputate someone's leg. And the mortality rate was massive. Something like 45% of people would die shortly after their operations. So you had a pretty much 50-50 chance of getting through an operation. Esdale, the hospital manager in Calcutta, had a death rate of 5%. So this was a great threat to the industry. And his data was presented to the Royal Society. Part of the reason his mortality rate was so low, one, because the patients weren't struggling, but the second thing was, as I said before, you can slow down blood flow, which is a great thing to do when you're amputating something. His data was presented to the Royal Society, and he was answered with the phrase, "The weak-minded Hindu is easily tricked." Once again, you see the clash of hypnotism and authority. So this guy Esdale was doing spectacular work in India, but again, the occult would not go away. He said that with one of his patients, he was so well connected that he could just think about him in another room, and the man would fall asleep into his curry. Remote action at a distance, which is as occult as it gets, and not something that we like to bring into modern medicine. So we're seeing remote action, the work of the magician, and we're seeing diagnosis and prognosis, the work of the doctor, the work of the shaman. And we're seeing clairvoyance, and we're seeing necromancy. This is the stuff of magic and the stuff of shamanism. There was a paper by Michael Winkelmann, who wrote the book Searching Shamanism in the Old Testament. He collected data from 47 different traditional societies, asking them about their magico-religious practitioners. Basically, he produced a questionnaire which asked people what their witch doctors do. And he came up with a list of cross-cultural motifs, cross-cultural tropes that are found in shamanism in different places all over the world. And this is the list. And as I read each item on the list, I invite you to go deeper and imagine what it would be like to wield that power. His list begins by saying the shaman has a dominant social role as the preeminent charismatic leader. One of the things that hypnosis is very good for is increasing charisma. As I said, I had a lot of trouble speaking in front of crowds, and now I seem to be doing it fairly often. But you can use this in all kinds of situations where people get nervous, particularly around sexual dysfunction and things like that. Second on his list was a nighttime community ritual. Now, this is very much the stuff of magic. This particular time at night is the best time to hypnotize people. Third on the list of the shamanic practitioners was the use of chanting, singing, drumming, and dancing. We've already talked about the chanting of mantra in meditation, the use of a drum, the use of a rattle. So we're seeing shamanistic techniques and hypnotic techniques overlapping. An initiatory crisis involving death and rebirth. Hypnosis can sometimes go softly, and I'm going very softly today. Some hypnotists work abruptly, regressing back to birth, taking people through death experiences sometimes. Next on the list was shamanic training involving induction of an altered state of consciousness, particularly with fasting and social isolation. A shaman will often induce a state of an altered consciousness, both in his or her clients and also in trainee shamans. They might do that through the drum, they might do that through the rattle. An altered state of consciousness characterized as a soul journey is also on the list, and altered states of consciousness involving visionary experiences, very much the stuff of hypnotism, contriving experiences to change the individual's habitual way of life, initiating them through visionary motifs into a new way of living. We also see this visual sense in a lot of cases in the history of science. I already mentioned a couple. I'm going to mention Tesla as well, the man who invented all kinds of things, from the Tesla coil, which is in old TVs, and communication at a distance, and the robot, and wireless transmission of electricity. He invented pretty much the whole telecommunications industry, the father of the electronic age, he's called. And this is what he says about it. He said, well, he never made a plan, he never made a blueprint, he never made a calculation. He said, I would lie down on the couch, I would see new scenes. They gain strength and distinctness, and finally assume the concreteness of real things every night. And sometimes during the day, I would start on my journey, see new places, cities and countries. I needed no models, drawings or experiments. I could fix them all as real in my mind. One day he was walking in a park in Budapest, and he was reciting poetry to his friend, and he was frozen to the spot by a vision of a machine which turned out to be the alternating current motor. And he went back to his lab and he made it, and he took a patent. And this is now the motor which drives all kinds of things in our culture. Then there's Kekula, who came up with structural theory from a vision he had as he was pondering his textbook, which he was writing, and he couldn't get very far with it, and he just turned to the fire and stared into the fire. And what did he see but a bunch of molecules moving around, assuming shapes? And then he saw, reeling up like a snake, grabbing its own tail, collection of molecules. And from this particular vision, he understood the shape of the benzene ring, which was a mystery at the time. Back to the list. Abilities of divination, diagnosis and prophecy, which we've heard about with Elizabeth O'Key, also Baron de Potet. Healing processes focused on soul loss and recovery. So when somebody comes to me as a client, I'm looking into their psychology, trying to find out what's missing, what went wrong, and what we can draft in to replace it, to make the soul complete, let's say. Illness believed to be caused by spirits, sorcerers, and the intrusion of objects or entities. It's interesting, isn't it? Sorcerers and the intruders or entities. Sometimes if I've got a client who's unhappy, I'll make sure that they've thrown away all their photos of their lost lover, for example, because these objects, these entities can continue to mess with our lives. We could talk about depression, how it affects us, gives us all kinds of diseases, from digestive problems to lack of sleep. Perhaps some of you have met sorcerers who have interfered with your lives and given you all kinds of problems that need to be worked through. Animal relations as a source of power is also on the list, including the control of animal spirits and the ability of the shaman to transform into animals. Animal relations as a source of power. That's not something we see very often, but that's something we're going to do very shortly. We're going to enjoy that. And I'm not going to make you cluck and walk about like chickens. Don't worry about that. This isn't that kind of hypnosis session. This is an internal meditative transformation into an animal, and I think you're going to enjoy it. Malevolent acts of sorcery, including the ability to kill others. Let's just jump through that one. Suggest you don't do that. Hunting magic, assistance in acquiring animals for food. Hunting magic, I haven't done that particularly as a hypnotherapist, but I have helped a guy with his cricket swing. You often see sports optimization, or sometimes CEOs who want to up their game with hypnosis. You see that kind of thing, perfecting of skills. So, those animals. We're going to be another 5 or 10 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, and then we're going to close and have some questions. So, I would like you to take a nice deep breath. Go deep, close your eyes, and return to that state of relaxation and sleep. And those of you who've arrived in the middle of my talk, make yourselves comfortable, arrange your bodies so your head is supported or you're lying down, and relax into a state of relaxation. And bring your attention up to the top of the head. Just relax all the muscles in the top of the head and send a wave of relaxation down through the forehead and through the head, through the neck, along the jaw, down over the shoulders. Let that wave roll down the arms to the elbows, to the wrists, out to the fingers. Let that wave roll down through the shoulders and down the back, the long muscles either side of the spine, all around the ribs, relaxing and going deeper down to the waist, relaxing all the muscles at the front of the body, the shoulders, the chest, solar plexus, belly, down to the waist, down to the feet. One more time, bringing your attention up to the very top of the head and sending a fast wave down through the head, shoulders, chest, solar plexus, pelvis, down through the legs, out to the feet. Relaxing and going deeper and deeper with every breath. And what I want you to do is to take yourself to a place outdoors, a beautiful place outdoors. This place can be somewhere from your childhood memories, or it can be a place that you invent right now. It can exist or it doesn't have to exist. It's totally up to you. It's your place. But I want you to look around that place and notice what the colors look like. Notice what kind of vegetation there is in this place and make those colors brighter. Turn those colors up. Make those greens greener, just as you would on Photoshop. Add a filter to make those colors brighter. And make those edges sharper as you're looking around this place. And I wonder what sounds you can hear in this place. And I wonder if you can hear those sounds, hear the imagination of those sounds. Can you hear the wind in the vegetation? Are there creatures there? And I wonder if you can smell any scent in that place, any perfumes in that place. What kind of feeling does that place give you when you are there? What does the ground feel like in this place? Is it humid? Is it dry? Is it warm? What does the air feel like on your skin? Make that place 3D and expand it out until it fills everywhere. And I want you now to look down in your mind's eye at the ground and wait to see whatever insects you might see there moving around in this place. Whatever movement, whatever life you can see there. Only things that you enjoy. Because this place is a place full of life. And this place is full of intelligence. There's nothing else but this place. And this place is buzzing with life. And in fact, I want you to notice the feeling of something watching you. The feeling of a benevolent, wise intelligence watching you. And you can't tell exactly where it is from, but you can feel it on your body and notice what it feels like. And as you feel that intelligence and hearing the sound of the maraca as it begins, taking you deeper, I want you to start moving around this place. And you can feel something moving with you, watching you. And as you're wandering around this place, feeling the ground beneath your feet, feeling the grass in places, feeling the leaves in places, feeling the twigs crack perhaps feeling leaves against your skin as you move around. And as you're wandering, you come upon a tree. And one of those wonderful trees which has almost a natural seat in it, like a natural throne in it. I want you to sit down on that throne in the tree. Sit down and notice what it feels like to sit down in that throne, what it feels like against your body, the temperature of the wood. And notice if your feet touch the ground and what they feel like against the ground, and notice the feeling of being washed. I want you to extend your feet in your mind's eye down to the ground if they're not already touching, and then feel and imagine roots growing out of your feet, growing down into the ground. And they grow with your breath, so as you breathe out, those roots are going deeper. As you breathe in, you're drawing in life from the ground. And those roots are breaking through the ground and becoming one with the roots of the trees. And your shins and your ankles are becoming one with the tree, becoming solid in the ground. You can feel yourself being washed by some kind of animal intelligence. And that presence, that benevolent presence is coming closer as you merge more and more with the tree, and the presence is coming closer. It's an animal presence. I wonder what that animal feels like. Is it an animal with legs or without legs? Is it an animal with fur or with scales or with smooth skin? Or what does the skin of that animal feel like? Is the animal predator or is it prey? Is it a winged creature? Does it have claws? Is it something that moves about in the night or something that moves about in the day? And this animal is looking at you. I want you to notice your own body and your own skin beginning to change now. What does it feel like as your skin begins to take on the feeling of that animal intelligence? What do the teeth of the animal feel like in your mouth? What does the tongue of the animal feel like in your mouth? And I want you to feel now your own teeth, your own tongue, and your own lips as they begin to assume the shape of the face of that animal. What kind of a face does it have? And what kind of a nose does it have? Where are this animal's eyes? Are they on the top of the head or side of the head? Are they eyes that move around quickly, or are they eyes that stare intently? Feeling that animal intelligence moving up from your eyes, over your head, across the animal's ears, moving down through the bones of the animal, down through your shoulders, noticing what it feels like and what happens to your mind as this animal takes over more and more of your body. Feel it moving down through the body, all the way down through your waist, into your legs, and the roots which are merged with the tree become the legs of this animal. And you find yourself transformed. What would the animal do? How would it move? And I want you to just begin to move in your mind's eye like the animal, to slither or fly or crawl or run, just as this animal would. As I rattle this maraca, I want you to spend some moments, just as this animal would, moving around, exploring the world in the guise of this animal. Imagine what it would feel like being this animal, and then make it real. How does its body move? How does it hold its head? What does it feel against its skin? How does its mind move? How does it experience comfort? How does it experience fear? And particularly, what does the animal want to pass over to you? What kind of information or what kind of skill or grace does the animal bring into your mind and into your body and into your sensation? Into the way that you move through your life? How could this animal make your movement more effective? more graceful, more powerful. Sometimes these animals will give you a name, and if the animal does give you a name, I suggest very strongly that you don't tell anybody else that name. In the occult sciences, you give power away by giving a name. So unless you want someone else to have power over your ally, keep the name to yourself. But spend some time with that animal, and you may notice later on, in the next few hours or few days or few weeks, you may notice the return of the animal in your movement or in your thoughts, in your movements of your mind, because this animal can come back to you whenever you need it. And in fact, I'd like you just now, in these last few moments, to project yourself into the future, into a situation which you're going to have to face. Maybe you've got something coming up, maybe you've got a particular conversation you need to have, or a particular thing you need to do, and I want you to project yourself into the future. Imagine yourself doing what it is you need to do. Imagine the scene, imagine the colors, imagine what the place is like, make it all clearer and sharper, and then bring the animal in to your body to help you negotiate or navigate or dominate or make the best out of that situation, to make a success out of that situation. What can the animal give you, and how can you receive it? And this is something you can do whenever you have something coming up. Whenever you have a mission or a meeting, you can project yourself into the future and take your animal with you, and maybe on another occasion you may want to take a different animal. And I'd like you to thank that animal. Maybe it's been there for a long time, or maybe you've never noticed it before. I want you to thank it for its time. Maybe listen to any message it has to say, or tell it something that it needs to know. And in a moment, I'm going to strike this rattle 3 times. And on the 3rd strike, you're going to come back to the room feeling good, feeling intrigued, feeling excited to be getting on with whatever's next. And you're going to bring that animal to the now, so you can let it out when the time is right. Take a moment to come back to yourself, coming back to this place. Noticing what your body feels like. Noticing what your toes feel like. Noticing what the tips of your fingers feel like. You can give a wiggle. Noticing what the breath feels like in the lungs. Noticing what your fingers and your teeth and your hair and your skin feels like as you return to the room and come back to me. So you will have noticed I've been very good and very kind here. I haven't done any post-hypnotic suggestions on you other than those to get you into trance. I haven't done any post-hypnotic suggestions to make you look up my books on Amazon, for example, to make you Google Reverend Nemu and the books I've written, for example. That's something you can do on your own afterwards.